Today we're going to be working on negative exponents day number 2. Content objective is students will be able to simplify expressions with exponents that are negative and 0. Language objective is students will be able to discuss patterns associated with negative exponents. And why am I learning this? Well, it's important for real-world problems like representing the size of something very small, such as the diameter of a white blood cell. So background knowledge, just recall anything raised to the 0 power is 1, so long as your base is not 0, okay, which means even a negative base raised to the 0 power will also be 1. We also took a look at what happens when we have negative exponents. This is the pattern. A base raised to a negative exponent is, in this case, 1 over the same base raised to that positive exponent. Okay, so let's recall what we saw from the previous lesson. 4 squared is 4 times 4, but 4 to negative second is 1 over 4 times 4. So that's 16 versus 1/16. 3 cubed is 3 times 3 times 3, but 3 to negative third is 1 over 3 times 3 times 3, which is basically 27 versus 1/27. Again, same idea, 2 to the fourth compared to 2 to the negative fourth. We see it's 16 versus 1/16. Okay, so from the previous lesson, we were able to distinguish a pattern that we were seeing between positive exponents and negative exponents. So if you were asked to evaluate 9 to the negative second, most of you would be able to come up with, it's going to be 1 over 81. But what's another way of looking at this problem? Well, like we've said before, positive exponents represent multiplying repeatedly, but negative exponents represent repeated division. So here we start with the number 1. Since it's a negative exponent, I'm going to divide my base of 9 2 times, which leaves me with 1 over 9 squared, which equals 1 over 81. So notice it still matches up with this answer here. It's just another way of thinking of the problem. Okay, so let's go ahead. What we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of one and then have you pause the video and try the other one by yourself. So here we have 2/3 raised to the negative second power. So first, always with exponents, essentially you are starting with the number 1. Since we have a base raised to a negative exponent, we're going to do repeated division. So what are we going to divide by? We're going to divide by 2/3. And there's going to be 2 of them, so it's going to be squared. I'm just going to leave it like so. So now what this becomes is technically a division problem because we normally don't leave fractions written this way. So I'm going to go ahead and put 1 divided by 2/3 squared. So I'm going to go write 2/3 squared. Well, this essentially is the same thing as, okay, taking the first number and then multiplying it by the reciprocal. So instead of 2/3, we're going to do 3/2 squared. So this answer is going to be an exponential form. It's just going to be 1 times this is just 3/2 squared. Yes, I still need the parentheses. And then if I evaluate it, that means 3/2 times 3/2, which would become 9/4. So that would be my answer. Now go ahead and pause the video and try number 2 on your own. Okay, let's see how well we did. So here, since you have a negative exponent, you're going to do repeated division. So notice when we do repeated division, this is now positive. Then we would rewrite this as 1 divided by 4/5 to the first power. Now we have to rewrite this into a multiplication problem. So it's 1 times the reciprocal. So your answer would be 5/4. Okay, so now let's move on to another type. So in the previous one, our base was positive, but you'll see in this one, our base is negative. So let's go ahead and give this one a shot. Again, I'm going to start with the number 1. Since we have a negative exponent, I'm going to do repeated division. Okay, so my base is a negative 1/3, so we're going to keep it the same. How many times are we going to divide it? We're going to divide it 2 times. So please keep in mind, if this was positive, I wouldn't do repeated division. I would be doing repeated multiplication. So don't automatically just divide every single time. We need to make sure, is your exponent positive or is your exponent negative? Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this as 1 divided by negative 1/3 squared. Then of course we would rewrite this into a multiplication problem. So it's going to be 1 times the reciprocal, so notice it's still negative, so negative 3 over 1 squared. So this is basically going to become, I'm going to just say negative 3 over 1 is just negative 3 squared. I'm going to evaluate that. Negative 3 times negative 3 is going to be a positive 9. So again, I would like you to go ahead and pause the video and try number 4 on your own. Okay, so let's see how well you did. So hopefully you saw that it was a negative exponent, so you did repeated division. And from there, you should have rewritten it as 1 divided by negative 3/5 cubed. And then from there, we write it to a multiplication problem, so it's 1 times the reciprocal of this, so it's negative 5/3. 1 times negative 5/3 cubed is just 5/3 cubed, which will evaluate to negative 125 over 27. Okay, so now, last type. Okay, so now here, this is a special kind because special type because our base is positive, but we have the opposite sign on the outside. So we would read this as the opposite of 3/4 raised to negative second power. So again, we're going to start with the number 1 because we have a negative exponent. I'm going to go ahead and do repeated division. So we're going to go ahead and divide by 3/4 2 times. So we're going to go ahead and write that squared. Here, I would read this as the opposite. So I'm going to keep that opposite sign, aka negative, on the outside. Now this can be rewritten as 1 divided by the opposite of 3/4 squared. I'm going to rewrite this into a multiplication problem. So now it's going to become 1 times the reciprocal. So it's going to be, whoops, got ahead of myself. Let's try it again. We still need that opposite symbol. 4/3 squared. Now from here, what's 1 times the opposite of 4/3 squared? It's just the opposite of 4/3 squared. So notice here, I kept my negative on the outside. I didn't put it on the inside because if I did, I'd be changing my positive base into a negative. So you have to be very careful not to do that. So now at this point, according to order of operations, should I multiply by the negative first, or should I square the base first? Well, according to order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses come first, exponents come second. So I have to square the number first. So 4/3 squared would be 16/9. But then I have to take the opposite of it, so it's going to be negative 16/9. So this is going to be tricky in the sense that you have to know order of operations. We do exponents first, and then we can distribute this. This is technically multiplication, which comes after exponents. So that would be my evaluated answer. So again, I would like you to go ahead and pause the video and try number 6 on your own. Okay, so let's see how well we did. Here we have a negative exponent, so we are going to be doing repeated division here. So it's 1 over the opposite of 1/4 cubed. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this as 1 divided by the opposite of 1/4 cubed. Then this turns into a multiplication problem. It will be 1 times the opposite of 4 over 1 cubed. Please understand that 4 over 1 is just 4. So here you would have to cube the number first, so 4 cubed is 64. Then we take the opposite of it, which is negative 64, and multiplying it by 1 still keeps it as a negative 64. So hopefully that's the answer that you got. Now at this point, what I'm going to actually have you do is go ahead and pause the video and try numbers 7 through 14 on your own. And we will be going over the answers shortly. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and quickly go over the answers. I want you to check your answers with the answers provided here and see how well you did. Number 7, we have a negative exponent, so we're going to do repeated division. From here, we would rewrite it as 1 divided by negative 4/5 squared, and then turn this to a multiplication problem. So here, negative 5/4 squared would be a positive because a negative times a negative is positive. It's going to be 25 over 16, but multiplied by 1 is still 25 over 16. So hopefully you got that one right. Number 8, here we have a negative exponent, so we'll also be doing repeated division. 1 over 1/6 squared, rewritten as 1 divided by 1/6 squared. This we can turn into a multiplication problem, so it's 1 times 6 over 1, 6 over 1 squared. 6 over 1 is just 6, so 6 squared would be 36, times 1 is just 36. Okay, let's keep on moving. Number 9, here it's the opposite of 3/8 raised to the negative second power. Since it's a negative exponent, we're going to do repeated division, so it's 1 over the opposite of 3/8 squared. So notice even the way that I read it, it's different. Here I would say the opposite. Now if it was on the inside, I would say negative 3/8. So keep that in mind. I'm going to rewrite this as 1 divided by the opposite of 3/8 squared. So this can be rewritten as 1 times the reciprocal, so 1 times the opposite of 8/3 squared. So I'm going to go ahead and do exponents first. I'm going to do 8/3 squared, which is 64/9. Take the opposite of that would be negative 64/9 times 1 is just negative 64/9. Number 10, here we have a positive exponent. So I'm actually going to do repeated multiplication. So technically we do have a 1 here, but because with positive exponents multiplying by 1 doesn't make too much of a difference, a lot of people don't write it down, which is totally okay. So just understand there is a 1 there too as well. So here, just evaluate it, you would get 4 over 49. So the thing about number 10 is I want you to make sure that you don't just automatically start dividing every single problem. Make sure that you're checking the exponents. Is it negative or is it positive? Because that will dictate, are you going to do repeated division or are you going to do repeated multiplication? Okay. Taking a look at number 11, here we have a positive exponent. So yet again, we're going to do repeated multiplication. So technically, again, you can start with the number 1. Is it necessary with positive exponents? No, but technically it's still there. So again, if you want to. So here, I'm going to go ahead and evaluate. Before I do that, it's a good idea to decide, is your answer going to be negative or is it going to be positive? Well, here, 2 negatives. Negative times a negative is a positive. Positive times a negative is definitely a negative. So my answer is negative. And here, 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. And then over here, this 0 is not negative or positive, but we do remember this. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1. Here, you would read this as negative 6/7 to the 0 power. So of course the answer is just 1. Okay, so now last 2 problems. Number 13, we have a negative exponent, so definitely going to do repeated division. So it's 1 over the opposite of 3/2 cubed. This can be written as 1 divided by the opposite of 3/2 cubed, which can then be rewritten as 1 times this reciprocal. So 1 times the opposite of 2/3 cubed. Again, first you're going to have to do exponents first. So 2/3 cubed is 8 over 27. Take the opposite of that, it's negative 8 over 27. Times 1 is still just negative 8 over 27. Number 14, again, we have a negative exponent, so we're going to do repeated division. So it's going to be 1 over the opposite of 5 cubed. Just a friendly reminder, keep in mind, this means the 5 is being repeated 3 times. This stays on the outside, the opposite of 5 times 5 times, 5, which would leave me with an answer of 1 over negative 125. Okay, so let's take a second and pause and discuss what we've talked about so far. Okay. This entire lesson, we've talked about what happens when a base is raised to a negative exponent. Okay, basically we understand that if a base is raised to a negative exponent, instead of doing repeated multiplication like normal with positive exponent, we actually do repeated division. Now this has a lot of connections with a previous lesson that we had a couple days ago. So let's draw that back in one more time. In a case like this, we went ahead and reduced whatever we could. I can divide negative 2/3 from the numerator and denominator 2 times, which leaves me here with just a 1 in the numerator, and my denominator is a negative 2/3 squared. Now, from the previous lesson, we didn't have this situation occur. It was always in the numerator over 1, and it was fine. But in a case like this, we wouldn't want to leave it like this because it's not simplified. And what's nice is this ties in very closely to what we've been working with in today's lesson because we understand, hey, that basically means 1 divided by negative 2/3 squared. And I know that I can rewrite that as 1 times the reciprocal of it, which is 1 times negative 3/2 squared. So basically in exponential form, which is what the instructions asked me to do, I would say the answer is negative 3/2 squared. But if the instructions said that I needed to evaluate it, I would go ahead and take a step further and say that it's 9/4. So it just depends. You want to make sure you're reading instructions carefully, because I noticed some of my students, they keep telling me that their answer is wrong, but in actuality it's because they're not writing it correctly. Sometimes they're asking for you to write an exponential form. Sometimes they're asking you to evaluate. Don't automatically jump to think that it's evaluation every single time. Okay, so at this point, go ahead and pause the video and try number 16 on your own. Okay, so hopefully you went ahead and extended the bases out, and then you went ahead and reduced, leaving you with just 1 over negative 4/7 cubed. Again, this is not a simplified answer, so you're going to have to go ahead and take an extra step. It means 1 divided by negative 4/7 cubed. This could be rewritten as 1 times the reciprocal, so 1 times negative 7/4 cubed. So here in exponential form, it's just negative 7/4 cubed. But again, if they ask you to evaluate, you would go ahead and multiply the numbers out, which would give you a negative 343 over 64. But again, it just depends on the instructions. So that's actually going to conclude our lesson for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, until next time, bye.